The forest was quiet under the silver glow of the full moon, but the stillness was only a mask. Every leaf, every shadow seemed alive with tension. Ilara moved carefully between the ancient oaks, her bare feet brushing the cool grass, listening to the whispers of the wind. She had learned long ago that silence was a friend and attention a weapon. Being an Omega in her pack had never been easy, but rejection had turned caution into survival. The pack elders had said it was unnatural. The calmness in her eyes, the way her thoughts often drifted to things unseen, to visions no one else understood. The whispers had started when she was a child, voices in the corner of a hall or a shadow crossing her path before any living thing arrived. The Omega born with such a gift was supposed to be honored, but instead they branded her a curse. Ilara kept moving, though the ache of isolation pressed against her chest. Nights were the hardest. The full moon made her senses sharper, yet it also drew attention. Wolves patrolled the forest, the borders of their packs marked with teeth and claw. Hunters, however, were a different danger. She had already seen 3 humans this week, their eyes wide with fear and greed and their weapons glinting in the moonlight. Suddenly, the wind shifted. Ilara froze. It was not the scent of humans that prickled her skin, but something far older, deeper and impossible to ignore. It was a presence that radiated strength, a pulse of power that vibrated through the soil itself. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with the raw pull of curiosity and instinct. From the shadows, a figure emerged. He was massive, taller than any wolf she had ever seen in human or Lycan form. His shoulders broad, muscles taut, and eyes sharp as steel. Fur darker than the midnight sky clung to his form, and the long coat he wore rippled like liquid shadow as he stepped forward. Every step carried authority, dominance, and something else, a quiet command that demanded attention. "Ilara," the voice said, low and resonant, cutting through the forest's stillness. She shivered. The voice knew her name. Who are you?" Her own voice sounded smaller than she intended, but she held her gaze steady. "I am Kale," he said simply, and the name carried weight like a mountain pressing down on the forest floor. "King of this territory," Ilara's breath caught. The Lycan king? Stories of his ferocity and control had been told for generations. Wolves trembled at his name. Humans feared his reach, and the elders whispered that he had not only survived wars, but reshaped the borders of the Lycan lands. She had never imagined he would appear in the shadowed woods, in the same breath as her exile. "I mean no harm," she said, holding her hands in front of her, though the gesture was almost useless against the presence before her. "I am only trying to survive." Kyle studied her. His eyes, glowing faintly in the silver light, seemed to see everything at once. Her fears, her doubts, the quiet power she tried to hide, and the sorrow she carried. "You are not just surviving," he said finally. "You are hiding, and hiding will not protect you here." Ilara's heart tightened. Hiding had been all she knew. "I do not belong here," she whispered. "No pack wants me, I am cursed." Kale's lips twitched, almost a smile, almost a scowl. "Cursed, perhaps," he said, stepping closer. "Or perhaps chosen. There are powers in you that even you do not understand." She took an instinctive step back, but the earth beneath him seemed alive, and it called to something deep inside her. It was impossible to ignore the pull. He was dangerous, terrifying even, yet the same danger called to something within her, a spark she had never felt before. Before either of them could speak further, a rustle erupted from the underbrush. Ilara's instinct screamed, and Kale's body shifted ready. From the shadows leapt a figure, part human, part wolf, from a rival pack, eyes glinting with malice. Ilara's pulse raced. She could feel Kale tense beside her, a living wall of power and dominance. Without thinking, she drew a slender branch from the ground and swung it, more out of instinct than hope. Kale moved as a blur, claws flashing, and the intruder fell with a sharp growl, retreating into the darkness. Ilara's hands shook. You saved me," she whispered, unable to look away from him. "I did what I must," Kale said simply, his voice calm again, but the tension in his body remained. His eyes found hers, and for a moment she felt naked under his gaze, not in fear but in recognition. He had seen something in her, something she herself did not yet understand. The forest seemed to exhale around them, leaves falling like tiny silver flames in the moonlight. Ilara's chest heaved, and Kale's presence was overwhelming, not threatening, but consuming. "You should not stay here," Kale said after a moment. You will be hunted again, and the world is not kind to Omegas like you. I have nowhere else, she said quietly, the truth spilling out despite herself. My pack, they rejected me. Humans fear me. I am nothing. You are not nothing, Kyle said sharply, his voice cutting through her despair. You have power, and it is time you stop running from it. Elara shook her head, tears threatening. She had spent her life alone, building walls around her heart. Walls to survive the harshness of the world. I am not ready, she whispered. I am not strong. Kyle stepped closer, the silver light outlining his form like a living shadow. Strength is not just muscle and speed, he said. It is courage, it is endurance, and sometimes it is trusting the wrong person to guide you. Elara's breath caught. His words, sharp and commanding, carried an unexpected weight. Trust had been a dangerous thing, and yet she felt the pull of it now, inexplicable, unavoidable. For the first time in her life, she did not run. Instead, she stood trembling but facing him. Her heart pounded not only with fear but with something else, a stirring that frightened her more than any enemy ever could. The wind shifted again, and Kale's senses flared. Another presence lingered at the edge of the forest, something dark, hidden but moving closer. He growled softly, a deep sound that made the leaves vibrate. Stay close, he said, almost a command, almost a plea. Before Elara could respond, the shadow moved. A large predatory figure lunged from the darkness. Kale reacted instantly, moving faster than thought, claws slicing through the night air. The attack was violent, sudden, and brief. The intruder fled into the woods, leaving only the echo of its growl behind. Elara's hand shook, her heart racing. I did not expect that, she admitted, her voice small. You should expect danger here, Kale said, turning toward her, his eyes softening slightly. But you also should expect that some things are beyond fear. Sometimes you must face them even when you cannot fully understand them. She nodded, unsure if she could, but drawn to the certainty in his presence. Her life had been a string of rejections and fear, yet here in the silvered forest, beside a being of overwhelming power, she felt strangely safe. Kyle studied her for a long moment. You will come with me, he said finally. Not as a guest, not as a servant, but as someone bound to fate in ways neither of us can yet see. Elara's breath caught. I do not know if I can trust anyone, she said, her voice trembling. Kale's gaze was unwavering, calm yet commanding. Trust is not given. It is earned. And sometimes, it is chosen. Tonight you have chosen to stay. That is the beginning. The moon rose higher, casting silver light over the forest. Elara followed Kale, her steps tentative but certain toward a future she could not yet understand. Somewhere deep inside, a spark had been lit. A spark that whispered of power, destiny, and a connection that could neither be ignored nor denied. And in the shadows, unseen eyes watched. The forest was alive with secrets, and Elara had only taken the first step into a world that would test her, challenge her, and perhaps claim her heart in ways she could never imagine. The night held its breath as she walked beside the Lycan king, unaware that the encounter had changed both of their fates forever. The castle rose from the forest like a dark mountain, its walls twisting in ways that seemed unnatural yet beautiful, vines of silver curling along stone like frozen flames. Elara had never seen anything like it, not in her wildest dreams nor in her most desperate nightmares. Every shadow in the corridors seemed alive, and the air thrummed with a power that made her skin tingle. Kale led her through the grand halls with quiet authority. His presence dominated the space, and even the guards seemed smaller in his shadow. Elara's heart pounded with a mix of fear and awe. The Lycan King was not a mere legend, he was real, and he was more terrifying up close. You will stay here, Kyle said, his voice calm but unwavering. You are no longer merely an outsider. You are part of what the prophecy calls the Omega who will stand beside the king. Whether you accept it or not, your destiny is tied to mine. Elara stopped, shaking her head. I do not belong here. I am not part of your prophecy. I am nothing. Kale's eyes, sharp and piercing as the coldest steel, softened slightly. Nothing is a word for those who do not yet understand their own power. You are far from nothing, Elara, and the time has come for you to see what that truly means. The first days in the castle were a trial in themselves. Elara had to learn the rhythms of a place built on centuries of tradition and power. Every corridor whispered secrets. Every guard watched with a calculating eye, and Kale's presence was both constant and overwhelming. She felt as if the walls themselves were studying her, judging her. Kyle, meanwhile, did not leave her side. He watched her every move, sometimes silently, sometimes speaking with a calm authority that made her flinch. "Walk with purpose," he would say, or "Observe carefully, the smallest detail can mean life or death." Ilara grew frustrated. She had survived the forest, evaded hunters, and endured the cruelty of her own pack. Why should this be harder? And yet, Kale's eyes were always on her, reading her like a book she did not know she had written. She hated that she felt exposed, yet strangely seen. One evening, under the light of the full moon, Kale led her to the castle's training grounds. Wolves padded silently along the stone, their movements graceful and controlled. Kale turned to her, his eyes serious. "You will train," he said. "Not for me, not for the pack, but for yourself. Strength is not only in the body. It is in the mind, the senses, and in the courage to face what you fear most." Ilara clenched her fists. "I am not a fighter," she protested. Kale's gaze did not waver. "You are already fighting every day against fear and rejection. This will teach you to fight with your power, not against it." Reluctantly, she began. The training was brutal in its own quiet way. She was pushed to her limits, made to balance on narrow ledges, dodge attacks from shadowy wolves, and use her instincts to sense unseen threats. Kale watched her, sometimes offering a correction, sometimes remaining silent, letting her struggle, and slowly, Ilara began to notice something she had never felt before. A spark of respect, a silent acknowledgement. Kale did not just see weakness or fear. He saw potential, resilience, and a strength that even she had tried to bury. One night, after a particularly exhausting training session, Kale and Ilara walked along the castle's silvered balcony. The moon hung low over the forest, bathing everything in an ethereal light. "You are learning faster than I expected," Kale said quietly. "But you still doubt yourself." Ilara's eyes were fixed on the forest below. "I have doubted myself my whole life," she admitted. "Even if I try, it feels like the world will always see me as unworthy." Kale's hand brushed hers almost accidentally, yet the contact sent a shiver through her. "Worth is not given by others," he said softly. "It is claimed, and sometimes it is revealed by those brave enough to face what terrifies them most." Ilara looked up at him, her chest tight. There was power in him, yes, but also something else. Something that hinted at loneliness, at pain, at a life lived with unbroken burdens. She realized that Kale, the king feared by all, was not invincible. He was human in ways no one could see. Before she could speak, a disturbance rippled through the castle. Guards shouted as a pack of rogue wolves breached the outer walls. They were fast, coordinated, and driven by a hunger that made them dangerous. Ilara froze, heart racing, and Kale's presence shifted beside her. "Stay close," he said, voice low but commanding. His form blurred as he moved into battle stance. The rogue wolves lunged, but Kale was faster, striking with precision and strength that left the attackers retreating. Ilara's instincts, honed in the wilds, kicked in. She guided some of the palace wolves, using what Kyle had taught her, and together they drove the intruders back into the forest. Her heart pounded not only from fear but from the thrill of standing beside him, not as prey but as a partner. After the chaos, Kale approached her. His breathing was steady, his gaze intense. "You are learning more than you realize," he said. "Not just how to survive, but how to fight beside me. That is rare, Ilara, very rare." She tried to hide her fluttering heart, but she could not. The danger, the battle, and the way he looked at her left her unsettled. Not with fear exactly, but with a strange pull she did not understand. You are not like anyone I have ever met," Kale said finally, his voice quiet. "There is something about you, something that makes even the strongest of my warriors hesitate. Something that commands attention without demanding it." Ilara's breath caught. She had been trained to hide, to appear small, to blend into the shadows, and yet here with him she felt seen, truly seen. Days passed, each filled with lessons, observations, and small challenges. Kale tested her in ways both physical and mental, always watching, always evaluating. Ilara began to notice the way he softened around her in small moments, the way he allowed a hint of patience where there was normally only authority. One evening, they walked through the palace gardens, silver petals drifting from moonlit trees. Kale stopped and turned to her. "You are stronger than you think," he said, "and more capable than you allow yourself to believe." but strength without understanding can be dangerous. That is why you must learn control. Ilara nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of fear and pride. For the first time she felt that she could belong somewhere. Not just in a pack, not just in the wild, but here in this strange, dark, beautiful castle beside the Lycan king. Suddenly, a distant howl echoed through the forest. It was not a call of challenge or warning. It was a signal, a herald of trouble yet to come. Kale's eyes narrowed and his jaw tightened. "They know of your presence now," he said, his voice grim. "Your power has drawn attention not just from those who would harm you, but from those who would challenge me." Ilara's stomach tightened. She had thought the worst of her fears was being alone, being rejected. But now she realized that her destiny, and the strange bond forming between her and Kale, carried weight far beyond her own life. Kyle's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "The road ahead will be dangerous, but you will not face it alone." Her chest tightened, her pulse quickened, and for the first time in a long time she felt ready. The wind whispered through the garden, carrying hints of shadows yet unseen, and the moonlight painted the castle in silver and shadow. Ilara understood that her journey was only beginning. The Omega who had once been rejected, cast out, and feared, was now at the heart of something greater than herself, standing beside a king whose power was unmatched, whose presence commanded loyalty and awe. And in that moment, under the watchful eyes of the forest and the moon, Ilara felt the spark of destiny ignite. It was a spark that promised danger, challenge, and perhaps a connection neither she nor Kale could yet fully comprehend. The night deepened, the castle held its breath, and somewhere in the shadows eyes watched, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Ilara did not know it yet, but the trials ahead would test not only her strength and courage, but the fragile bond beginning to grow between her and the Lycan king. The path of prophecy was never easy, and the forest whispered secrets of power, love, and betrayal that would soon demand everything she had to give. The moon hung high above the castle, silver and cold, as if foreshadowing the storm that was coming, and somewhere deep within her chest, Ilara felt the stirrings of something she had never known: hope, fear, and the quiet thrill of a connection that defied logic and reason. The night ended, but the story had only just begun. The first light of dawn crept through the high windows of the castle, painting the stone floors in pale gold. Ilara woke to the quiet hum of the castle stirring, wolves padding silently along the halls, guards preparing for the day, and the faint rustle of Kale moving somewhere nearby. She stretched, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The training, the battles, the constant tension, it was all shaping her into someone she barely recognized, yet someone she wanted to become. Kale appeared at her door just as she was finishing her morning preparations. His presence filled the room like the sun breaking through clouds, and Ilara found herself instinctively straightening, though she tried to appear calm. "Today you will learn more than just control," Kale said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made her stomach tighten. "You will learn the truth of your visions and why they matter." Ilara frowned. "Visions? I do not understand. Sometimes they are clear, sometimes they are just shadows. They frighten me." Kyle's eyes softened, but his expression remained serious. "Fear is natural. You must learn to trust them, to see what lies beneath the surface. Your gift is rare and it is tied to the balance of this kingdom. If you ignore it, the consequences could be dire." Ilara swallowed hard. She had spent years trying to suppress her abilities, hiding them even from herself. But something in Kale's presence, in the unwavering way he looked at her, made her believe for the first time that she could face her own power. They walked through the castle corridors to a secluded chamber, where silver light spilled from tall windows onto an ancient map etched into the stone floor. Kale gestured for her to step forward. "Focus," he instructed. "Close your eyes and let the visions come. Do not resist them." Ilara hesitated, her chest tight with uncertainty. She took a deep breath and shut her eyes, letting the hum of the castle fade into silence. The air seemed to thicken, and a soft glow pulsed at the center of her mind. Shadows and shapes swirled, forming images she could barely comprehend. Wolves howling under a blood-red moon, a kingdom on the brink of war, and herself standing at the center, a beacon of power that drew both fear and awe. Her body trembled as the vision sharpened, revealing a darkness approaching the borders of the kingdom, unseen yet unstoppable. She gasped, opening her eyes, and Kale's gaze was immediately on her. You see it, he said softly, but there was no mistaking the tension in his voice. You see what others cannot. That is why you are here, Ilara. You are not just an Omega, you are the key. Ilara shook her head. I cannot control this. I could destroy everything by accident. Kale stepped closer, his presence grounding her. Control comes with trust. Trust in yourself, and trust in those who stand beside you. I will not let you fail. Not while I breathe. The sincerity in his voice stirred something within her. Fear still lingered, but beneath it a spark of courage began to burn. She had spent her life believing herself alone, believing that rejection defined her, and yet here was someone, Kale, who refused to see her as weak or cursed. He saw her as capable, necessary even, extraordinary. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden commotion in the courtyard. Shouts echoed through the castle, followed by the sound of running paws and clashing claws. Ilara's heart jumped. Danger was never far away in Kale's world. Kale's expression darkened. Stay here, he commanded, but Ilara did not move. You cannot follow, he warned, but her resolve was stronger than her fear. I can help, she insisted. I can sense them. I can guide you. Kale studied her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. Then stay close, and trust your instincts. Together they ran to the courtyard. A rival pack had breached the outer walls, their leader, a massive black wolf with eyes like embers, charging into the fray. Kale moved with lethal precision, taking down attackers with swift, calculated strikes. Ilara's visions pulsed, guiding her movements. She warned him of hidden threats, sensing ambushes before they materialized, her heart racing with both fear and exhilaration. For the first time, she realized her gift was not a curse. It was power. And Kale's trust in her made it stronger, sharper, more focused. Side by side, they repelled the intruders, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of instinct and growing bond. When the battle ended, the courtyard silent except for the soft growls of their own wolves. Kale turned to her, eyes fierce and unreadable. You are stronger than you know, he said. And your courage. It is remarkable, Ilara's cheeks warmed. Praise from him was rare, and she felt it deeply. But alongside the warmth, a new unease settled in her chest. The visions had shown her more than just this skirmish. They hinted at something darker, something approaching from beyond the kingdom, something she could not yet name. As they returned to the castle, Kale's hand brushed against hers. The contact was brief, almost accidental, yet the spark it left behind was undeniable. Ilara's pulse quickened, and for a moment the castle, the dangers, the uncertainty, all of it faded. She was aware of only him and the strange, terrifying, thrilling connection that bound them. Later, in the quiet of her chamber, Ilara sat by the window staring at the forest. Her mind replayed the day, the battle, the visions, Kale's gaze, his words. A question she had buried deep began to rise. Could she truly belong somewhere? Could she be more than the rejected Omega her pack had condemned? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. She hesitated, then opened it to find Kale standing there, the moonlight catching the sharp angles of his face, making him look both magnificent and dangerous. You cannot face what is coming alone, he said quietly. Nor should you. But you must be prepared. The threats you sense today are only the beginning. There are forces that would see this kingdom and you destroyed. Ilara nodded slowly. I will try, she said. I want to understand. I want to learn. Kale's gaze softened ever so slightly, though the intensity never faded. Good. You have potential, Ilara, more than you realize. But potential alone is not enough. You must face your fears and you must trust me. Trust me even when it is hard. Her chest tightened. Trust was a fragile, dangerous thing, yet she felt a strange compulsion to take that risk. She had spent too long hiding in shadows, fearing rejection, and yet here, beside the Lycan king, she felt a possibility she had never dared imagine, that someone could see her for who she truly was, and still stand with her. The night deepened around the castle, the silver moonlight painting the walls with shadows that seemed almost alive. Somewhere in the distance, the forest whispered with secrets, hints of danger yet unseen. Ilara shivered, both from fear and anticipation, knowing that the trials ahead would test everything. Her strength, her courage, and the fragile, budding bond she shared with Kale. As she gazed into the moonlit forest, she sensed a presence, not human, not Lycan, but something ancient, hidden, and powerful. Her heart quickened. Kale had warned her of dangers yet to come, and now she understood the gravity of his words. The world she had entered was larger, darker, and more complex than she had ever imagined. And yet, despite the fear, she felt a spark of hope. For the first time, she realized that she was not entirely alone. She had someone beside her who believed in her, who valued her, and who would fight with her, not against her. The spark of destiny glimmered in her chest, fragile but persistent. Like the first light of dawn breaking through the night, Alara knew that her journey had only just begun, and that the path ahead would be filled with danger, challenge, and choices that would shape not only her future but the fate of the entire kingdom. The moon hung high, casting silver light over the castle and forest. Somewhere in the distance, shadows shifted and unseen eyes watched. Alara felt a shiver of anticipation, knowing that the trials ahead would demand everything she had to give, and that the bond forming between her and the Lycan king was just the first step toward a destiny neither of them fully understood. The story of the rejected Omega and the Lycan king continued, their fates intertwined, their power and trust growing with each passing day. And as the wind whispered through the castle towers carrying secrets and warnings, Alara understood that the true challenge, the one that would test her courage, her heart and her very being, was only just beginning. The forest beyond the castle had grown darker, denser, as if the trees themselves whispered warnings to all who passed. Alara followed Kale along the winding paths, her senses alert to every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig underfoot. The events of the past days had sharpened her instincts, but the forest still felt alive with unseen dangers. Kale moved beside her with the ease of a predator in his own domain. His presence was steady, commanding, and protective. Alara found herself relying on him in ways she had never imagined, drawn to the quiet power he radiated. She had spent so long hiding from the world, from rejection, from herself, that the sensation of standing beside someone she could trust, someone who believed in her, was both exhilarating and frightening. "This place," Kyle said quietly, his eyes scanning the dense foliage, "is where the boundaries of the kingdom weaken. Ancient forces linger here, watching, waiting. Your visions, they will help us navigate what lies ahead." Alara swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "I still do not fully understand them. They are like shadows, sometimes clear, sometimes just shapes I cannot grasp." Kale's gaze softened slightly, though the intensity never left his eyes. "That is why you must trust yourself. You see more than you realize, Alara. You feel the currents of power in ways others cannot. That is why you are here with me." The forest seemed to hum around them, a vibration that tickled the edges of her awareness. She closed her eyes for a moment, focusing inward, letting her senses stretch outward into the trees. Shapes moved at the edge of her perception, subtle, fleeting, yet unmistakable. Something was watching them. Before she could alert Kale, the shadows surged. Wolves, larger and more feral than any she had encountered, emerged from the underbrush, their eyes glowing with a strange, unnatural light. Their leader, a massive creature with fur as black as night and eyes like molten gold, stepped forward. It radiated power, commanding the others with a silent authority. Cal's posture shifted instantly, tension rippling through him. "Stay close," he commanded, his voice low and sharp. "Do not run. Trust your instincts," Alara nodded, heart hammering. She could feel the pull of the visions, guiding her movements, alerting her to the wolves' attacks before they occurred. She warned Kale of hidden threats, and together they moved with a silent coordination that surprised even her. The battle was swift and brutal. Kale's strength was unmatched, his claws flashing like silver lightning. Alara's senses guided her, allowing her to anticipate attacks to help protect both him and the palace wolves. The shadows of the trees seemed to shift and dance around them, the forest itself becoming part of the struggle. In a fleeting moment, she realized something extraordinary. She was not just surviving, she was contributing. Her visions, once a source of fear, had become a tool of power. And standing beside Kale, she felt a surge of confidence she had never known. When the last of the feral wolves fled into the darkness, Kyle turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You are stronger than you realize," he said. "And your courage. It is remarkable. Few would have faced them as you did." Alara's cheeks flushed, but she could not hide the exhilaration in her chest. For the first time, she felt a true sense of belonging, not to a pack, not to the forest, but here beside Kale, in the midst of danger and trust. The forest fell silent once more, but the quiet was uneasy. Alara's visions pulsed, showing hints of something deeper, older, and far more dangerous. "There is more," she whispered. Something is coming. Something older than this forest, older than the kingdom itself. Cale's eyes darkened and he placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we prepare, he said. Whatever it is, we will face it together. They returned to the castle as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The castle, once a place of rigid order, now felt alive with tension. Ilara moved with purpose, understanding for the first time that her presence here was not accidental. She was no longer the rejected Omega wandering the forest. She was part of a destiny that stretched far beyond herself. In the quiet of the castle library, Cale spoke again. The forces you sensed are tied to the old magic of this land. Long before our kingdom existed, there were beings who commanded power in ways that few understand. They are stirring again. Ilara's brow furrowed. And the prophecy? What does it mean for me? Cale's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. It means you are not merely an observer. You are part of the balance. Your choices, your courage, and your strength will determine the fate of this kingdom. And I will stand with you, but I cannot fight your battles for you. Her chest tightened. She had spent so long believing herself powerless, rejected, and alone. Now she realized that her life had meaning beyond her fears. And for the first time, she felt the weight of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a path to something greater. Days passed in preparation. Ilara trained harder, guided by Cale and her visions, learning to harness her abilities and to trust her instincts in battle. She and Cale grew closer, their moments of quiet connection lingering in the spaces between duty and danger. A glance, a brush of hands, a shared silence beneath the silver moonlight. Small gestures that carried weight beyond words. One evening, under the pale light of the full moon, Cale led her to the castle's highest tower. The wind whipped through their hair, carrying the scent of the forest and the distant threat that awaited. Cale's eyes held hers, intense and unreadable. You have come far, he said, farther than most would dare. But the true test is coming, Ilara, not of strength but of trust. You must trust not only your power but your heart and me. Ilara's pulse quickened. She had always feared connection, feared betrayal, feared that opening her heart would only bring pain. And yet, standing here with the wind at their backs and the world below, she felt a quiet courage stirring. I trust you, she whispered, though the words felt both fragile and powerful. I trust you, Cale. Cale's expression softened, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. Then you are ready, he said. Before she could ask what he meant, a scream echoed from the castle gates. Alarms rang out as the palace guards rushed to defend the walls. Ilara's visions flared violently, showing her a group of shadowed figures moving with precision. Assassins, or worse, servants of an older, darker power that sought to seize control of the kingdom. Cale's eyes narrowed and he moved to her side. Stay behind me, he said. Do not underestimate them. They are clever, trained, and relentless, but together, we will face them. The battle that followed tested everything they had learned. Ilara's visions guided them, warning of hidden threats, revealing ambushes before they occurred. Cale fought with the skill and ferocity of a king who had ruled for decades, yet he adapted to her instincts, moving with her in a silent, lethal partnership. The castle walls shook with the clash of claws and the roar of wolves, the night alive with power and danger. Ilara felt a surge of exhilaration and fear, adrenaline sharpening her senses and focus. She was no longer the timid Omega lost in the forest. She was a force to be reckoned with, a key part of the kingdom's defense, and someone Cale relied upon not only for strength but for insight. When the final shadowed figure fell, silence descended over the castle once more. Ilara's chest heaved, her body trembling from exhaustion, but a fierce satisfaction glowed within her. She had survived. She had contributed. She had stood beside the Lycan king, and for the first time, she felt the weight and beauty of her own strength. Cale turned to her, his expression unreadable but his eyes soft. You did well, he said quietly. Better than I expected. Ilara's cheeks warmed, but she did not speak. Words felt inadequate to describe the storm of emotions inside her, fear, pride, exhilaration, and the quiet stirrings of something more profound. The night settled over the castle, calm once more, but the sense of impending danger remained. Her visions had shown her more than just the battle. They had hinted at a far greater threat approaching, one that would challenge not only their strength but their bond, their trust, and the destiny that now tied them together. Kyle placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her amidst the lingering tension. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow the real challenge begins, and we must face it together or the kingdom may fall." Ilara nodded, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. The forest and the castle had already tested her, but she knew the true trials were yet to come. Standing beside Kale, she felt a quiet determination. She would not fail. She would not be cast out. She would embrace the power and destiny that had once terrified her. And somewhere deep within the shadows, ancient eyes watched. The storm that approached was far larger than any battle they had faced. But Ilara's courage, and the bond forming between her and the Lycan king, would be the beacon in the darkness, a light that even the oldest, darkest forces could not ignore. The moon hung high, casting silver light over the castle and forest. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and full of trials. But for the first time, Ilara did not fear it alone. She had Kyle by her side, and together they were ready to face whatever destiny awaited. The sky above the kingdom burned with the first light of dawn, casting streaks of gold and crimson across the horizon. Ilara stood at the highest tower of the castle, wind whipping through her hair, heart pounding with anticipation. Today the final trial awaited, the culmination of everything she had learned, every danger she had faced and every moment that had tested her courage. Kyle approached silently, his steps confident and deliberate. His presence grounded her, steadying the storm of fear and excitement that churned inside her. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low but firm. Ilara nodded, though uncertainty lingered. I think I am. I have to be." Kale's eyes softened just for a moment before the steely edge returned. "You have come far, Ilara, farther than anyone imagined. Today you do not fight alone. Together, we face the darkness." They descended the castle steps and entered the courtyard, where the air felt charged, heavy with anticipation. Shadows moved along the forest edge, darker and more menacing than ever before. Ancient power stirred, unseen but palpable, threatening the very balance of the kingdom. Ilara's visions pulsed with urgency, warning of traps, ambushes, and challenges that could overwhelm even the strongest of warriors. "This is it," Kyle said, his gaze sweeping the horizon. "Whatever comes, we face it as one." The first wave of the threat emerged from the forest, a swirl of shadowy figures faster than the eye could follow, their forms shifting like smoke and darkness. Wolves and men, both twisted by ancient magic charged with lethal precision. Ilara's breath caught, but she did not hesitate. Her instincts guided her movements, her visions predicting attacks before they came. She moved as if part of the forest itself, weaving between the chaos, warning Kale of hidden dangers. Kale fought with unmatched ferocity. Each strike of his claws was decisive, each movement fluid and deadly. Yet even he relied on her insight, on the bond they had forged, on the trust that had grown between them through trials, training, and shared danger. Together they were more than King and Omega. They were partners, a force that none could easily overcome. As the battle raged, the ground shook beneath them. From the shadows, a figure emerged unlike anything Ilara had seen, towering, cloaked in darkness that seemed to swallow light. Eyes glowing with an ancient fire, it radiated power that made the hair on her arms stand on end. Kale's eyes narrowed, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. "This is it," he said. "The force your visions warned of. Face it. Trust yourself." Ilara's chest tightened. Fear surged, but it was tempered by resolve. She had learned to embrace her power, to trust her instincts, and to believe in herself not just as a survivor, but as the Omega who stood beside the Lycan king. She raised her hands, letting the visions guide her, feeling the currents of power pulse through her, merging with the strength that Kale had awakened within her. The figure advanced, dark energy swirling around it, testing the limits of their strength. Kale and Ilara moved as one, their bond unspoken but undeniable. Every strike, every dodge, every calculated move was synchronized, a testament to the trust and connection that had grown between them. Ilara felt the ancient power probing her mind, challenging her control, tempting her to doubt herself. But she remembered Kale's words, the trust he had placed in her, the courage she had discovered within. She pushed back, letting her visions sharpen, letting her instincts guide her, letting the bond with Kale anchor her. A final clash erupted, the force of it shaking the ground, scattering shadows into the air. Ilara's vision flared, illuminating the figure's weak points, revealing the path to victory. With a deep breath, she focused, moving with precision and purpose. Kale followed, his strikes deadly and decisive, and together they broke through the darkness. The figure staggered, the ancient power retreating, its shadow dissolving into the night. The threat was vanquished, but the air remained heavy, the forest and castle still humming with residual energy. Ilara's chest heaved, her body trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline. She had survived. She had faced the ancient darkness, and she had done it not as a rejected Omega, but as a force of her own right, standing beside the Lycan king. Kale approached her, his expression unreadable for a moment, then softening. He reached out, placing a hand on her cheek, steadying her. "You have done more than survive, Ilara," he said. "You have embraced your destiny. You have claimed your power. And in doing so, you have proven yourself to me." Ilara's breath caught. The words held a weight she had never expected. All the fear, all the rejection, all the years of feeling like nothing. They dissolved, replaced by something entirely new. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time she felt fully seen, fully understood, fully valued. Kale stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking until their foreheads touched. "You are more than the prophecy," he whispered. "You are my equal, my partner, my Omega, and you have my respect, my trust, and something deeper, if you are willing to accept it." Ilara's heart swelled, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with connection. She began, words faltering. "I have always feared being rejected, but standing here with you, I feel like I belong. Like I have a place where I am wanted." Kyle's hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing lightly. "You are wanted, Ilara, by me, by the kingdom, by the fate that brought you here. You are no longer the Omega who was cast aside. You are the Omega who stands beside the king, and together, we are stronger than any force that threatens this land." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the aftermath of battle surrounding them, the forest and castle quiet, except for the soft hum of life returning. And in that silence, something unspoken passed between them, a bond forged through trials, trust, and shared purpose. Ilara finally spoke, voice trembling but steady. "Then I choose to stand with you, Kale, not because I have to, but because I want to. Not because I am bound by destiny, but because I choose this. I choose you." Kale's eyes softened, a rare smile touching his lips. "And I choose you, Ilara, always." The words, simple yet profound, hung in the air like a promise. The storm of shadows and danger had passed, but the bond they shared, forged in fire and fear, was stronger than ever. Ilara felt a calm she had never known, a sense of belonging, purpose, and connection that filled the emptiness she had carried for so long. In the days that followed, the kingdom began to heal. The palace wolves patrolled with renewed vigilance, the forest whispered its approval, and the people of the kingdom, once fearful of the Omega, now respected and valued her strength and courage. Ilara trained with Kale, not as a subordinate but as a partner, their bond deepening with every shared moment, every victory, every quiet exchange of trust. Night after night they walked beneath the silver moon, their hands brushing, their hearts synchronized, their silence filled with understanding and unspoken promises. The rejected Omega had become the heart of the kingdom, the partner of the Lycan king, and a force that even the oldest powers could not ignore. One evening, as the moonlight bathed the castle in silver, Kale turned to her, eyes intense but gentle. "Ilara, the prophecy spoke of an Omega who would rise from rejection, who would stand beside the king and face the darkness. It did not say how or why, but it is clear now. It was always you. And you have surpassed even the oldest expectations." Ilara smiled, her heart full. "I never believed I could be more than less. But with you, I am more. Stronger. Braver. Not just for the kingdom, but for myself." Kale took her hand, holding it firmly, as if anchoring them both to this moment, to this victory, to this bond. "And that, Ilara, is what makes us unstoppable. Together we are not just king and Omega. We are destiny, and nothing can break that." The castle stood silent around them, the forest at peace, and the kingdom safe. For now. But more importantly, in the quiet of that night, Ilara felt something she had never known. a sense of belonging, of love, of purpose. She was no longer rejected. She was chosen, and as Kale drew her close, the Lycan king and the Omega, bound not just by prophecy but by trust, courage, and a bond that transcended fear, the world seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the rise of a partnership that would shape the kingdom for generations. The rejected Omega had found her place, not through acceptance of others but through the courage to embrace herself, and through the hand of the Lycan king, she was finally home. The moon hung high, casting silver light over castle and forest alike, and the night whispered promises of future challenges, victories, and the enduring power of connection. But for now, Alara and Kale stood together, stronger, united, and unbroken, ready to face whatever the world or fate might bring next.